Very good. Okay, so let's introduce you to the participants today. We have a panel chatting with us today. And firstly, we have, well, myself. I'm the academic director here at ISM and help look after a number of areas, and I know some of you, and perhaps a new face to others. We also have Nicola. Nicola leads our RPL team. She's a specialist in recognition and blended learning, and some of the options that are available to organisations and individuals. And we also have Megan Signorelli, who's from Verto. And Megan works as the skills checkpoint consultant for the Sydney and Central Coast region and Newcastle, looking after some government funding that's available via that system. And we're going to talk a bit about that today. Okay, so let's get started. The webinar, of course, is about reskilling and upskilling your staff, and such an important part of today's economy, particularly where we are. We're going to look at who we should be talking about. So what staff? We're going to talk about the benefits of upskilling. And we have 3 steps that we think will be really interesting of what you can do to actually help get this get the upskilling and reskilling started. We're going to talk a little bit about recognising people's skills. Of course, Megan's here to talk about some government funding, and that's probably the most exciting part of the webinar, and then some steps that we can take. So let's get started. PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, have recently provided a report on the workforce of the future, and it looked at what's the competing forces that are shaping our future moving into 2030. And many of the people, as you can see with the data on the screen, is that people are worried about what's happening, automation, what are the new skills. And so we're in a fast pace of digital change. It's reshaping our workforce. The talent pool that we have needs to be reskilled to become fit for the future. And you need the right skills to succeed in the working environment. And of course, one of the issues that we would all be considering in the workplace is, how do we close that gap? How do we close the gap between the current and the future fit workforce that we're going to need? Many people rely on, I guess, the old system, and that's about making people redundant and moving them out of the business. But the smart leaders are going to move towards trying to repurpose and reskill and upskill, as opposed to bringing on new staff. And so somehow find that optimal balance between our current staff and what we can do to help them move into new technology and artificial intelligence and other long-term employment opportunities. Now, a large percentage, I know, working in the training sector and of course across a range of sectors, a large percentage of the workforce that we work with term mature workers. And we wanted to focus on mature workers today because often they're the people that sometimes get forgotten in training. We have new starters. We do a lot of work with our new starters. And emerging leaders, we do a lot of work with emerging leaders, but sometimes the staff that are the backbone of the business, we can leave behind. So we're going to talk about mature workers. And so when we are, you know, who are the mature workers? If you go to the Department of Employment, some of these faces might be familiar. The Department of Employment suggests that mature workers are those that are 45 plus. I know you don't think those guys are 45 plus, but they are. Of course, if you go to our own Bureau of Statistics, then according to the Bureau, if you're a mature worker, you're over 55. And you can see that some of those people look okay. I don't know that Boris, he's not looking great there in the middle, but he would be termed a mature worker. Mature workers in Australia are a significant part of the workforce. Over 9 million people are aged over 45. Almost 50% of those are in employment, and that contributes to almost 40% of the entire workforce are actually in that over 45 category. And so that's the reason we're talking about them today, and talking about how we should be looking at updating or reskilling those people because of the benefits they bring to the workplace. Some of those benefits include, of course, the versatility. You know, sometimes they can turn themselves a number of ways to help the business keep going. They add versatility to your team. Perhaps some of you out there are thinking, well, you know, maybe I'm one of those mature age workers, and what do I bring to the team? And we're going to talk about that shortly. Often mature age workers are more productive. They have a different sense of purpose, and bring create a very creative productivity to the workplace. Of course, they're also the repository of knowledge. They're the ones that can tell you whether we've tried this before, or we did that 10 years ago. But they're the people that actually, they are your corporate knowledge, and they're people that you don't want to lose. There's been studies shown that retaining and retraining the mature workers are often it's more cost effective for organisations than bringing on recruiting, hiring, onboarding, socialising the new hires. And so that's something certainly to consider. And of course, other research shows that mature workers are actually less resistant to change, which is a little bit of a myth buster. They're more likely to stay with the organisation. They often don't take as many days off as other age groups, and they're interested in learning, and they're interested in keeping up with technology, and they're more than capable of doing that. So, you know, a really interesting way to look at the workforce and the benefits that they bring. So what are the 3 steps that we need to look at to create a compliant and up-to-date workforce? So we're going to talk a little bit about investigating what we need, researching what we've got, and then doing a little bit of analysis. So firstly, what do we need to investigate? Well, we need to know what skills that we actually have in the workplace. Now, for some of you, you might be looking at talking to your team, but for others of you, you might be thinking, hang on a minute, what about me? So this is a little bit twofold. What skills do you bring to the workplace? What skills do you have? What are your technical skills? What knowledge do you have? So we need to think about that. And of course, then what skills do your team have? Or you might be in a very high level in your organisation and you're thinking about across the whole organisation. What skills do we have? So how do we do that? We need to have a look at what we call what is termed as a skills audit. So we're going to look at the skills and the knowledge and the attributes that people bring. So the skills might be hard or soft skills, such as technical skills. It might be lending. It might be, could be engineering. So we call those the technical skills. Of course, there's the soft skills like good communication, which are very, very important. Knowledge. What knowledge do your staff have, or what knowledge do you have? So it might be around legislation. It might be around policy and procedure. It's that corporate knowledge that we talk about, and some of the knowledge that you need to actually keep the organisation running effectively. And thirdly, what attributes do people bring? So what attributes do people bring to the table? Some of them might be very flexible. Others might be self-motivated, or perhaps have some, really persistent, the characteristics of persistence and questioning. And they're all excellent attributes that we would want in our staff. And so you need to think about that. What are the skills that we actually have? What are the things that people already bring to the table to make our organisation or our team, or perhaps yourself, the valuable member that you are? And as we look at the skills audit process, I've got a little example up there. That's a very simple one, and we have some that are quite more detailed than that. But pretty much what we do is we look at the task or the duty that people are performing, and we list them all down. And you can see I've listed there that this person, an entry-level person, might be wanting to book a training room. And so what are the skills and knowledge and attributes they need for that? So they may need to use the system, the screens in the system. They might need to be able to check how available that training room is, or maybe it's about processing the booking. And then we rank them. We say, well, how good are you at that? Are you highly skilled? And the ranking system can be however you'd like it to be. But are they highly skilled? Are they competent, which is what we want people to be at? Maybe they're developing their competence, or maybe they've just been identified as needing some help. And of course, maybe they've only just started. And you can see here that on the that this person that we've ranked, they have a you know, they're quite good. They're competent at using the screen. They can check. They're very good at checking the availability and processing the booking. Maybe they need a little bit more help. Of course, that's at an entry level, perhaps, task that someone would do in the organisation. And we can do a skills audit, or you can do your own personal skills audit on yourself and say, well, what would be some of the higher level skills that, or tasks that I would take on? And maybe some of that would be giving perhaps performance feedback. You might be involved in managing a team or managing a department, and you might have to give performance feedback to your staff. And so some of the skills required to be effective at that would be listening skills, maybe some problem solving skills, and then understanding the policy, procedure and knowledge that's involved in that. And you can see we've ranked this person. Oh, and that might be me. I've ranked myself on that. And that's now giving me some idea of, well, what are some of the things that I now need to look at? So we've investigated. What skills do we have? What knowledge do we have? And what attributes do we bring to the table? The second step then is the research step. And some of this research can take quite some time. The area that we would research would be, well, obviously I know what I've got, but what do I really need? So what does the ideal employee look like? Or if it's for me, what skills do I need to actually be promoted in the business? I'm looking for I'm looking for the ideal job. What is it that I need? I know what I've got, but now I need to know what I need. So what is the skills and knowledge and attributes that's going to make up that the job role? So what we need to do is then look around and research some of the industry standards that there are. So if we're in lending, we know there's a number of standards that sit around lending. If you're in the manufacturing industry, it might be some industry standards about quality control or quality audit, or WHS. If you're in a service industry, it may be some other standards that you need to meet. So you need to research those standards. You go to look at the job description that you have and look at the statement of duties. What is the skills and knowledge and attributes that are required that are sitting in the job description? What legislation are you covered by? What has to happen? What do you need to know? And what are the best practice benchmark? How do you turn your organisation into a best practice in your industry? So what benchmark are you looking for there? So you need to consider the requirements of what needs to happen right now, but also what happens in the future. Are there procedures that are requiring different ways of doing things? And a great example, of course, is COVID. We've all now moved to working in a very different way. Maybe we're grouping things differently. Maybe our skills are different. Maybe there's going to be other changes in work practices that we need to look at. So let's review the skills that are needed, and you need to do the research for that. Some of the areas that you might consider are some of the generic competencies that we need in business. And so they are things like communicating ideas and information. And that might be communicating to stakeholders, it might be to an executive team, it might be to your clients, it might be to other team members. So how good we know we've already done the skills audit and said, well, this is what we can do, but what level of communication do we actually need? You know, what level of communication do you need to move up the ladder? And how do we organise that information? How do we plan information? How do we work with others? Of course, using technology. These are all of the generic competencies that sit with people as they do their work. And so there's some of the other areas that you might need to consider. Thirdly, we then need to analyse what we've come up with. So I know what I have, I know what I need, and obviously there's a gap in between. And that's the skills gap. And that's the analysis that we need to look at. So what are those gaps? In a recent study, there were 8 common gaps that came about. And 5 of them, interestingly, were soft skills. So skills like critical thinking and problem solving skills. They were the gaps that this study found, that people could not do that very well. Attention to detail, another interesting soft skill that people need. Communication skills, leadership skills and teamwork skills. These were all areas that showed up as a common gap when this study was done. So what treatment do we look at? What's the solution that we need to find? And really, you need to decide on the solution that matches your needs. Everyone has different needs. You've already sat there thinking about, well, I know what my team might need, I know what I might need, and they might be very different. So we want to look at how do we close that gap through that upskilling or reskilling or recognising the abilities of your current staff. And you can see that there's, on the screen, there's a number of opportunities to be able to do that. You may be upskilling with in-house training or in-house learning. You might have on-the-job project, experiential learning, and of course, training, more formalised training, of course, can happen. And so how are you going to close that gap? It is around looking at your future needs and looking at you as a best practice organisation. What is it that you're going to need to do to move on to close that? Now, I've got Nicola here today who's going to talk to us a little bit about recognition. And that's one option of how we close the gap and formalise some of the training or experience that people have. And so I'm going to throw across to Nicola now, and she's going to chat to us about the recognition of prior learning.
Thanks, Jen. And good morning, or where I'm from in WA, everybody. And recognition of prior learning. What is it? I'm going to refer to some notes to keep me on track because I can talk quite a lot for a long time being a trainer. So recognition of prior learning is a way to utilise a person's skills and experience to achieve a qualification. Ideal for mature workers, as it says, myself being a mature worker. And RPL can also be especially prevalent for those mature workers who've been in our workforce for many, many years, and they hold that great long-term gold of industry and organisational experience and knowledge, but they don't have the qualification to really support what they do. So as financial services and other industries place a greater emphasis on compliance and codes of conduct, which Jenny just touched on, holding that certificate to support the skills and experience will often be required. So why use RPL, or recognition of prior learning? Well, in a way, it's a shortcut to achieve a full qualification, so or part thereof. If we can flick over to the next slide, and which I'll talk a bit about that later, which we refer to as blended learning. It's also a great way to be recognised for your work history, skills and experience, and get the relevant qualification for it. So why wouldn't you want to have your knowledge endorsed? So RPL can save on time. It can really help organisations minimise the impact of skilled staff taking time out to complete online or face-to-face workshops. So I'm going to give you a bit of an example. So let's say Zena worked for a bank for 10 years, including being a branch manager. And then she worked part-time in administration for a conveyancing office for 2 years while raising her family. So she's got a whole lot of industry experience in a couple of different roles. She's decided to apply for a role in a bank as a loan processor. And she notes that the certificate in services is preferred and is detailed in the job application. So while she has all this background experience and historical experience, she hasn't got the certificate to support what she can do. So how long could it take Zena to achieve her Cert 4? So well, that could really depend on what her commitments are and what she wanted to complete and how she completed the program, perhaps through an online self-paced learning or through interactive workshops. But she could be looking at around 6 months to actually get that qualification behind her. And quite often as well, it can be difficult to self-motivate. So Zena knows that she has the skills and experience to complete the role, but she just doesn't have that qualification. So this really is where RPL can help. So how does RPL work with ISM? So what we do at ISM, next slide please, we offer a completely bespoke process for our clients and assess every scenario based individual skills and experience. So it's not plugging people into a process. We actually mold the process around them where we can to suit their skills and experience. So for our clients, we provide value in that the learner does not have to spend hours and hours collating lots of information to satisfy the criteria of what are called units of competency, which make up the qualification. We help and do all that for you. Earlier I mentioned as well that you can achieve either a full qualification via RPL or what we call, which is a blended learning approach. So this is where you can complete as much of the qualification via RPL, where we tap into your skills and experience and see what actually is going to fulfill the requirements. And then what we do, if there's some gaps, we can plug those gaps with our online or face-to-face workshop modules. So the learner gets not only the satisfaction of using their skills and experience, where they need to upskill, we can plug that gap as well. So it's a blended approach of both. So what I'm going to do here is just briefly step you through the RPL process to make it clear. So just to give you a live example, I was recently referred a client who had been in banking for 20 plus years. With COVID, which we've touched on, she decided to obtain some qualifications in mortgage broking in order to be better positioned for other roles that may come up or possible changes that could happen where she worked. So she provided evidence to me of what she thought were her skills and experience and to demonstrate why she believed she actually fitted the RPL model. So having a look through that information, I could then prepare what we call an RPL submission to look at we have to complete the core units, but then is looking at the elective units were actually tailored to meet her needs. So once I established that she could undertake full RPL, I prepared a proposal tailored to her own needs, what she needed to do to achieve the 12 units of competency. How we then go about collecting and substantiating that information is via telephone calls. So what I would do is conduct 1 or 2 telephone interviews where I'd ask questions to validate the skills and information that the learner says that they currently hold. So I would ask for examples, tell me about a time that you've done this, give me an example where you've been in this situation. And then sometimes that will produce documents. So they may say, I was on a project and what we did there was X, Y, and Z, which fulfills the requirements of what we're looking for. And they may send me some project documents and minutes of meetings. So then I'm collecting that evidence on behalf of the learner. So sometimes there's a second interview that may take place and occasionally a third if we still need to collate all that information together. So after the time to cross-reference all of the information I've collected plus any supporting documents to ensure that we meet the criteria of each unit, which then is packaged up to fulfill the qualification. And as I mentioned earlier, any gaps will be plugged through that blended learning approach. So in this particular case, the client had to spend approximately 3 hours of talk time with me, as opposed to many hours of study or collating that information, which they think might fit the criteria and quite often may not. So that's where there's some savings there in time. So we aim to make the RPL process as time efficient as possible. And that really is our point of difference with the RPL process for anyone who's ever undergone that with other RTOs. So after all, the client is applying for RPL as they believe they're already competent. So we want to demonstrate that. We don't want them to feel like they're being assessed as someone who's not got the skills and experience. We want them to be looked after as someone who has the skills and experience. So the information just needs to be put together to demonstrate that it's in line with what's required as part of the national training packages. So to summarise, there are many people in the workforce, and we're talking today about mature workforce, who have plenty of years experience suitable to achieve a recognised qualification. And through the RPL process, we aim to help them achieve that recognised qualification for their skills and experience. And it also makes them feel valued and that they've actually got that certificate behind them as well. So that's how the RPL process works with ISM. So back over to you, Jenny.
Thanks, Nicola. As I said, Nicola, or as Nicola mentioned, she's in Western Australia, so she was up very early this morning to be organised for this today. So we appreciate that, Nicola. It looks very sunny there and nice.
It is now.
I'm in Sydney and it's very chilly. So thanks for that, Nicola. As I said, Nicola's a specialist in that area and has some really been able to help a number of people where they've thought that their only way of moving forward to be promoted was with a qualification, and they thought that they had many, many years study ahead of them, and they were very surprised to find that there was another solution. So Nicola's always got great good news stories. And now we're going to hand over to Megan. Megan's from Verto, and Megan's going to tell us all about the government funding opportunities there are for our mature age workers. Thanks, Megan.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Yes, it is cold here in Sydney. Yeah, so I'm here to talk about Verto and the Skills Checkpoint program. Verto is a non-for-profit, and we run many of the government-funded programs, one of them being the Skills Checkpoint program for older workers. This came in January of 2019, and it was part of the 2018 budget to upskill and retrain us mature workers in the workplace. The program didn't think about COVID hitting, which has been another, as they all say, we're all in this together, but it's been an interesting time as well. So basically the Skills Checkpoint program is the eligibility. I'll go into the eligibility a bit bit later, but basically you can save up to 50% on your training. There's $2,200 available from the government, which they match dollar for dollar as a contribution. So you could do a course that's $4,000 and the government will pay $2,000, and then you pay $2,000. So, and the way it works is we just basically get a training provider to invoice us, and then we'll invoice you as the individual, or if you're an employer paying the co-contribution, invoice the employer. Once they pay us the 50%, we will pay the training provider the full amount. So it can be made up one course, or you could do several courses depending on what you're wanting to do. So it is basically, you can upskill to your current career, or you can upskill to a new career, or you can be upskilling to get a new role in your current industry. About you know, it's all tailored to the individual, and a lot of what Jenny's been talking about is what I go through. Basically, once we assess the eligibility, there's a few, you just need to enroll online and then have a meeting with me, which we go through the paperwork. At the moment, the meetings are currently being held by Zoom, but normally I've been driving all over the countryside. So yeah, so it can be for anybody, the individual, as I said, upskilling their current career or into a new career. And as Jenny mentioned earlier, I'll always suggest people look at what, you know, if they're looking for a new role or a new position, have a look at what the job description is, have a look what they're asking for, and that usually tells you what training you need to do. And a lot of times you have those skills, you've got the industry knowledge, you're dealing with people that are coming through that have, they might be younger, they might have the recent qualification, but they haven't got the industry knowledge that you have. So by gaining that qualification, whether it be through RPL or the full qual, you can access this funding to help you achieve that goal. So yes, if you could just on to the next slide, please. So the eligibility criteria is have to be nice and young, but age between 45 to 70, Australian citizen or permanent resident, currently employed or recently unemployed within the last 3 months, and not registered with the Australian government services provider through Centrelink. And then the next step is to then, once you pass that criteria, we need to go through the process of getting you registered online with us, and then having the meeting, which we go through an application form, the skills and training agreement, which sets aside the funding for you, and a career plan, which we go through and discuss your needs, look at your relevant transferable skills. There's no, a lot of times people ask me, you know, if they don't know what they want to do, there's no good me telling them what to do. I talk to you and try to discuss and drill down what it is that you need, have a look at what you've done previously, and what, you know, what you could do to further, you know, enhance your and create more opportunities for the future, whether it be with your company now or with in another role in another company or another industry. So basically, just move on to the next slide, please. Is there one more slide? No? And
I was going to say, Megan, maybe you could give some examples of, I know recently we've been working with Megan and Verto with a number of organisations, and one of them is Hawkesbury Council. And so maybe a little bit of an explanation of how that worked for them.
Yeah, so with the Hawkesbury Council, they put all of their senior management through Skills Checkpoint program that were fit the criteria. We had some people that we had to say, sorry, you're not old enough, poor things. But anyway, they basically, it just helped the council to be able to afford to put, because they paid for the co-contribution for everybody, but it helped them to be able to put everybody through program and be able to all be on the same page with the management strategies and what, you know, whatever other skills gaps they had, even though many of them had been, you know, employed for many years or in management roles for many years. You can always learn something new. I've done my diploma of management, and that's what these people are doing, but recently done a few more modules through the new diploma of management and still learn something new. So you can always learn new strategies on moving forward, and all in all, yeah, they're very happy and they're currently doing their training. But yeah, so an employer, if they're putting their staff through professional development and they're over 45, you can either pay full price or contact me and pay half price, basically up to $4,000. So, but it still helps you with your training budget to be able to, you know, be able to have more training happening within the business, because, you know, this is a legitimate thing about upskilling and retaining and maintaining us matures in workers in the workplace.
And Megan, how long does it take for that paperwork to go through? So if, you know, if I wanted my organisation to take advantage of that, is it a long process or is it a short, like what's the example of a
So for an employer, you mean, if I was talking to an employer?
Yeah, yeah.
So basically, we obviously need to talk to the employer, and if they're if they have already got an idea of what training they're putting their staff through, then just generate a list of the people that are doing the training and who is over 45. Then we just need to work in alliance with the business, which so that it helps that, you know, it doesn't affect workflow and everything, and so that they can all go on and register with our career gate. And there's just 2 aptitude tests that people have to do. It's not detrimental that you get 100%, but it is detrimental that you need to do those 2 tests. And then I just need to spend half an hour with each person, depending, like that's because obviously through COVID, but I have met people in a group if they want to meet like that, or individually, but we still can get through them. Once that's all that paperwork's done and we've had signed it off and established what training and what training provider they're going to use, then we just generate, you know, ask the training provider to invoice Virto for the full amount. Then we invoice the employer for half of the cost of the training for the people that were over 45. And once they pay us, we pay them. That process can, because it's got a few variables in there, can vary from client to client. But you know, yeah.
So on average, it might take a couple of weeks to get that sorted, but once people understand what they want and then it's underway, it's a relatively quick process.
And it's a good idea to see me before you start training, because technically this process has to happen before you start training. And so
we're going to talk about that in the next steps, and how they can actually contact you to do that. So, I think it's interesting for people to understand from an individual point of view. It's quite quick. Often government funding can take some time to be organised, but this is relatively, you know, a quick option, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So it does, especially, you know, we'll have some individuals that know what training they want to do. They know where they want to go. We still have to put them through the same process. They've usually got a quote already. We request the invoice, send off the request for invoice to us. And then, you know, we invoice the individual for half. Once they pay us, we pay the training provider within 5 days. So the only thing I say is don't ring me up and say, I want to start this training on Monday, because it won't happen. We do need about, you know, a week or 2.
Yeah, okay, that's great. That's really helpful, Megan. That's a nice, clear, you know, wrap up. So I guess the main points from your point of view is the eligibility criteria, that, as we know, over 45. Yep. And some of the other ones that are listed there. So that's excellent. Thank you.
Pretty simple. Yeah, age 45, Australian citizen, either currently employed, or if you're unemployed, no less than 3 months and not registered with Centrelink. So, yeah.
Very good. That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that. Now, we do have a few next steps here, but I thought, and I'm going to just chat to Maddie, our producer there, to see if there's, I'm not sure that people can actually turn on turn up their volume, whether they're muted, or if people had questions about that. If you did have a question, you could pop it in the chat box if you wanted to, or Maddie may be able to turn you on. I don't know. Can you do that, Maddie?
Hello. Currently don't have any questions, but happy to translate them across as they come through.
Okay. So if we do have some questions, we're happy to answer some now. We've got a little bit of time now that we can answer any questions if you've got them. And I can't see any in the chat, but often you'll think of something later on, and you certainly can email them, and so we can talk to you about that. So from today, the next steps, we will send you the recording of today's webinar, and you'll get all the information that we've provided. We will, if there are some questions, we'll provide you with a Q&A document, and so often there are some frequently asked questions that we're aware of. I can see a couple of questions there. We might answer those. We've got Stuart asking, are all ISM courses eligible for the government subsidy? It's an over 45s subsidy, this particular subsidy, Stuart. So yes, they would be. It's the eligibility criteria is really back at what you saw before on the screen, and we're happy to chat to you about that. So no problem with that.
ISM is a registered training organisation, and so that makes it very simple. Like all of your courses will be covered, or part courses or workshops.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, that's right. So that's a good point, Megan. That it isn't just an online course. It could be a virtual webinar, and in some future life, we may actually even all meet together somewhere as a workshop. We do those, and it doesn't have to be a full qualification. It may be that you just need a very small skill set. They also fit under the Verdo funding umbrella. Someone's also asked about can they do any level of qualification? Yes, you can. So it's from, it can be a short course, so it doesn't have to be a qualification. It can be a Cert 3 all the way from Certificate 4, Diploma, Advanced Diploma. They all fit under that umbrella.
Jenny, there's another question in the Q&A from Alison Whitaker. She's asking, are government employees exempted from this scheme? So
No.
Megan, that's a question for you.
No, they're not. It's
That's the long answer, no.
well, Hawkesbury Council government employees. So,
yeah. So we've been involved with at the moment with Hawkesbury Council, and they are obviously a local government, and there is quite a substantial number of staff that have gone through the Diploma of Leadership and Management under that mature age funding. So government employees, not a problem.
and
You're welcome, Alison saying thank you. So yes, you're welcome, Alison.
welcome.
But we'll gather up some of these frequently asked questions and can pop them back to you, because I'm sure other people will have. As soon as you get off the webinar, people go, "Oh, wish I'd asked that question." So we're also going to send you a link to a consultation, because listening to it in a webinar is great, but there's going to be something very specific that you might be interested in, and we're happy to offer a free consultation on helping you discover what your needs are and what is going to best suit you. So it may be that you know, you feel that whatever industry you're in or whatever your circumstances are, that they are they're individual to you, and that's how we deal with this. It is an individual consultation where we're going to look at your needs and your solution, not everyone's solution, but just your solution. And so we'll send a link out, and you can book a time to do that.
There's another question from Melissa.
Yeah, so sorry, do I have to tell my workplace if I want to study? I don't believe so, no.
So you can study if it's linked to your current industry, but you still don't have to let them know through this program. I'm talking from my,
Yes.
Or you can let them know if it is to do with it, then maybe they might pay the co-contribution. But no, you might decide you want to go and do something totally different. You might want to be a florist, for example. That's a way off it. Obviously, ISM doesn't do floristry, but for that example. Yeah. So yes, no, you can do something that's going to further your career, and your employer doesn't need to, because this funding is attached to the individual, even though the employer can pay the co-contribution. So it's totally confidential.
Yeah, so you may, Mel, be thinking that you need to validate your current skills because you want to move on to another, or you may have another opportunity somewhere, and this would be one way of doing that.
Or even an opportunity within the company.
Obviously an opportunity, yes, within the company. And as Megan said, we offer training around leadership and management and financial services, so banking and lending, credit, and mortgage broking. But of course, the funding doesn't have to sit with us. And if there's something else you're looking for, that doesn't mean we're very happy to. We have links with other training providers, and if you want to do floristry, I'm sure we'll find someone who can help you do that. So that's very happy to help you with that. I guess the time's just about up. So if you've got any other questions, happy to. Oh, yep, here's another question. How many times am I eligible for funding?
It's a one-off at this point per person. There's as I said, 2,000 excluding GST, 2,200 including GST. Basically, can do up to $4,400 worth of training for the 2,200.
But it's one bite at the cherry. So
at this point, one bite in the cherry,
yeah.
And the program at this point is only running like till the end of 2020. Yeah, so it will see.
So really, it's about. You need to, if it's something you want to do, you'd want to be getting on board soon. Yeah, yeah. So we know we've only really got
question as well. I just saw.
To go. What's that?
I think Melissa had another question. Can I do any level of qualification?
Oh, I think we answered that. Yeah, she can do anything. Short course up to an advanced diploma. Not a problem. And I think if we come back to am I eligible for one lot of funding, then that's about then looking for the best bang for your buck, if you like, and that is
one course or two, like what, to use up that funding. It just doesn't have to be one course. You can access the full money if you haven't used it all with one course.
That's what's just come up in the next question.
Oh, okay, right, yeah, so more than one course, but the full amount of funding, yes.
Yeah, so like if they do a course that's $3,000, obviously the co-contribution is $1,500, so that leaves another $500. So you can do a course to the value of $1,000 for $500 and access the money. The course can be more than that, but you will only get the $500.
Okay, so you use up to that amount. Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point.
An example of that may be, I look after quite a lot of students who first of all get their Cert 4 and then upgrade to a diploma level. So they could do both of those as subject to obviously their total cost. And so they could enrol in the Cert 4, then the diploma.
Correct. And when we're doing the career plan, we would note that on the career plan that they're doing the Cert 4, but in the future they would like to perhaps do the diploma, and then it's marked on the career plan, and then we can come back and access the rest of the funding. Or we can update it if they decide afterwards as well.
No, great questions. Great questions. Okay, guys, we're going to send you a link to the free consultation. We'd be very happy to chat to you. The link will be a calendar, and you can book in the times that you like. And we can run through what we've talked about today, or you may have some other questions around upskilling and reskilling yourself or your employees. Thanks, Nicola. Thanks, Megan, for today. Much appreciated. Some great information, and enjoyed that experience. So we'll sign out. Thanks very much, everybody. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.